Brought to you by Charity Mobile. Switch to the phone company that supports your beliefs. All plans start under $50 before taxes and surcharges. Use promo code TRADITION at CharityMobile.com for a special offer. One of the hallmarks of the scourge of modernism and heresy in the church today is a total disregard for the basic values of life. The church's teachings on these matters have been utterly rejected, even now, seemingly by the highest authorities in Rome, judging from the appointments at the Pontifical Academy for Life. This manifests itself in several ways, including the elevation of, we'll call it the unnatural, that sin that James Martin has a peculiar interest in for a Catholic priest. He spends entirely too much time thinking about that stuff for a Catholic priest, to the point where it should cause some concern for bishops when he tries to go and speak places. But he is clearly not the only priest in the church who has this weird fixation. This typically happens, what you're about to hear, during the season of Lent. For whatever reason, in Germany, Austria, and a few other places, in the season of Lent, there are overt attempts to either denigrate our Lord and his sacrifice on the cross, done in parishes and cathedrals by bishops through utterly blasphemous displays of art comparing him to an animal and other gross things, or to turn our Lord into an icon for the entire James Martin life. They do this frequently during Lent, to the great scandal of Catholics, and every year when this happens, no condemnation from Rome happens. So it doesn't give me any pleasure to report today's story, which comes to us from cath.net, and the only redeeming quality about this story is it didn't happen during Lent. Instead, it happened during Eastertide. Go figure. The headline from cath.net: Horror over performance of half-naked dancers with chickens in diapers in Paderborn Cathedral. This was a cathedral in Germany where there was an immodest display that happened. And quite frankly, it should surprise no one in the slightest that those in attendance who were the biggest cheerleaders for this were in fact, secular authorities. Some very high-profile secular politicians were in the attendance of the place, of the event, giving their approval, giving standing ovations, and the rest of it. They loved what they see. A cathedral is a house of worship, among other things. What it is it's a seat of power for the bishop, who controls what happens in his diocese. To have a display like this in a cathedral sends multiple messages, one of which is, this is the seat of power, this is what power wants, this is the interpretation of the true faith in your cathedral or in your diocese for the church. And take the implication of that as far as you need to. This is a statement about what it is you are to believe, and what it is you are to believe is sacred, and how you are to treat the sacred. When we see these displays of a James Martin variety, that is a message about what is sacred in the eyes of the bishop and the secular authorities. They always get the approval of the secular authorities with these displays, every single time. There's no sense of sacred in the new synodal church. And you will notice here that the bishop isn't doing anything about it. Give a half-hearted apology. Let's go to the article for details. It's not terribly long. Quote, as part of the ceremony marking the opening of the 1,250th anniversary of Westphalia on May 15th, in Paderborn Cathedral, two half-naked dancers performed a performance with gutted chickens in diapers. The ceremony began with speeches and festive music. After about an hour, the performance began on a podium in front of the main altar. The three dancers, two men and one woman, belonged to the ensemble Body Talk. Their nearly 5-minute performance was titled Westphalian Side Story. Among the guests were German Federal President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, Minister President Heinrich Wüst, and Udo Benz, Archbishop of Paderborn. The ceremony was organized by the Regional Association of Westphalia-Lippe. After days of protests from Catholics, a half-hearted apology has now been issued. Initially, it was claimed that the specific content of this program item had not been known to those responsible. Both the LWL and the Metropolitan Chapter of Paderborn expressed their sincere regret that the performance offended religious feelings. Such an effect was never intended and does not correspond to our standards for this place, with its special religious, historical, and cultural significance. We're deeply sorry for any irritation caused, and we thank everyone who took the time to share their perspective with us. End quote. We are sorry that you got bothered by this. We are sorry that it offended your religious sensibilities. That is what they're saying. It's a half-hearted apology, because they should not be terribly worried what Catholics think of this. If we had our feelings hurt, they shouldn't be terribly concerned with that. They should be more concerned about what God thinks of the place that his bishop sits, how it's being used to promote evil. How it's being used to promote immodesty and immorality. And why did anybody think having a secular performance in a cathedral was a good idea? These kinds of things, if the church is going to be involved at all, should not happen in a cathedral. You want to make the argument that you can have festivals and things on cathedral grounds outside of where the holy sacrifice of the Mass is offered. That is a conversation you can have. But inside where the holy sacrifice is offered, the miracle of transubstantiation is effected, where God himself incarnates into the hands of the priest. A true miracle every single day happens in that cathedral, assuming it has a Mass every day. That should give people pause. But those secular authorities don't believe. If you look at the Mass attendance rates in Germany, you'll see why this happens. You'll see also that in Germany, it's pretty clear that most Catholics don't actually believe anyway. They advocate openly for changing the church's teachings on all kinds of things. And when your mind is steeped in sin, especially sins regarding impurity, the natural effect is that you will either eventually walk away from the faith if you aren't actively resisting, or you will try to make the faith accommodate your life. That is what has happened here. You see it because, going back to the scandal of last week, when you have authorities who don't take the basic ethics of life seriously in the church, what the church teaches about these things, they're all interconnected, you will have this kind of gross immodesty celebrated. Doesn't matter if that was a fairly tame by contemporary secular standards performance. It was weird? Yes. Does it belong in a parish? No. Doesn't belong in a cathedral? No. And generally you'd think it doesn't belong anywhere in society more broadly, but unfortunately that's a conversation many people aren't ready to have yet. The noteworthiest thing of all of this was that the highest profile secular authorities were in attendance, because a cathedral is a seat of power. And it was a message being sent. We are the ones with the power. This is what the true faith is. This is what you are to believe. Embrace this body display. Be good to have bishops who, even though it will cost them greatly, will stand up and resist this. And they don't have that almost anywhere in Germany. Church in Germany is in a state of, frankly, open apostasy. That's why they want to change everything. That's why you get these half-hearted half apologies. We're sorry we offended your religious sensibilities. They should be worried about what God thinks of this. But many of them, including bishops and priests, simply don't believe. Pray for their conversion. Pray that they come to their senses before it's too late. Curious what you think about this, so let me know in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It absolutely helps, so does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.